Hey there, loungers. It is game day. So if you have not listened to the latest episode of the 500 Section Lounge, first off, shame on you. You should have. And two, you would know if you had why I'm talking to Dalton this morning. Dalton, you guys beat the team to the south the day we talked. So we made it a point that we are going to talk on game days. How in the world are you? It's game day for Michigan State today. They've got
That's
the
right.
play-in game. So how are things looking?
Well, first off, we should make sure we do this again Saturday if there's a win, and then Monday. I mean, we gotta get this going. But for Michigan State in this, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, you talk about the play-in game. It's the first four. Obviously, this is new territory for Michigan State, and a little bit of a head scratcher too when you take a look at Syracuse and Utah State's resumes. How Michigan State fell back into a play-in game, but that can be a whole nother conversation. I think if you told the Michigan State fan 3 weeks ago that the streak would have went to 23 years for Izzo and the Spartans to keep dancing, they would have been like, really? We're going to beat Illinois, Ohio State, and Michigan? Really in the last 2 weeks? And they did. So there's a lot of appreciation just in general. But no, this should be a great one. And of course, I mean, it's kind of just a romantic game too for a first four, right? Of course, you have UCLA, you have Michigan State. I think that's 27 Final Fours between the two programs. You have John Wooden's connection. His statue sits right outside Mackey Arena. And of course, we know what he did with UCLA back in the day as the head coach. So it's a really neat combination of things. Plus, Mick Cronin, UCLA's head coach, has went on the record time and time again saying when he got the job at UCLA, look, I think I can make this what Tom Izzo has made Michigan State. Not in terms of just historical prominence or anything like that, but I think we can get into people. I think we can play physical. I think I can build that here at UCLA. So it's a bit of a mirror in that sense. I mean, for a Pac-12 school, UCLA is about as physical as you will find for a group like that. So it's setting up to be a pretty interesting one.
Well, and you mentioned that they're playing where John Wooden went to school. They're playing at Mackey Arena, which is another historic type of place, because you've even mentioned on past shows, obviously there's not going to be as many fans, but that is one of the best places to play a game. And you're playing a tournament game there.
I know. Well, and it goes even further than that. I mean, I saw the pictures of Michigan State when they were warming up on the floor and practicing earlier in the week, and they had the Spartan head up on the Jumbotron with Mackey Arena above it. And it was like,
didn't look right, did it?
And so, I mean, if you follow Michigan State, the last couple of years, the great Cassius Winston, Xavier Tillman, a small fun fact about them, there's only one Big Ten arena they didn't win a game in. Mackey Arena. And so, I mean, this has been a house of horrors at times for Michigan State. Mackey Arena has. I don't think the Spartans have won there since 15 or 16. But a little bit different when you don't have the paint crew. You don't have all the different things that make Mackey maybe so special in terms of the atmosphere. And who knows? I mean, UCLA is a long drive for some of those fans. Michigan State, not so far. Maybe it turns into a home court advantage at Mackey. It's kind of a cool thing.
If somebody's driving from UCLA to get to Mackey Arena, more power to them. God love them.
Never question March Madness fans. Anything happens.
Never. No, you're absolutely right. Well, to get a little bit deeper in, first off, do you think, and this is, take off your homer hat a little bit, does Michigan State beat UCLA?
My answer would be if the Michigan State team that we've seen at times shows up, Michigan State will win. Now, if you ask me if I think they would, I mean, it's been so hard to predict. Sure. Here's some numbers to kind of give an example on that. So, and for context, Michigan State defensively has been stellar, especially the last few weeks. They've been very good. Offensively, it has been a struggle at times. Take the Maryland game in the Big Ten tournament, for example. Michigan State in the first 10 minutes had 23 points. And then there's a 12-minute window where Michigan State didn't record a field goal. Right. I mean, it's just been that hot, that cold for this group. And so here's some numbers. We talk about the great defense and how it puts them in these positions. For Michigan State, when the team scores 60 or more points in a game, just 60, the Spartans are 15-4 for the season. Ooh. The problem is there's been 8 games Michigan State hasn't been able to get 60. I mean, that's pretty severe.
Now, what's the record at that point?
Oh, so under 60, 0-8.
Oh, so they've lost. They have to hit 60 in order to have a chance in terms of the numbers this year.
Correct. Now, and also, of course, I mean, you're a Big Ten fan, and a lot of the listeners are Big Ten fans. You know what it is in the Big Ten. It is grinded out basketball. It's slugging each other. So for reference, Michigan State in the non-conference, of course, I haven't played a non-conference game since back in December now at this point. But the lowest they scored in a game against a non-Big Ten team was 75, and that was a part of that win at Duke. If you remember, Michigan State was ranked 4th in the country and 6-0 in the non-con. And then the Big Ten hit. And of course, it's not just how good the Big Ten was. Michigan State had some struggles. And I mean, since we're throwing out numbers, Rocket Watts, when Rocket Watts shows up and is able to score the ball like he did that last game against Michigan in the regular season, when he scores 9 or more points in a game, Michigan State's 9-0 for the year. I mean, that's simple. For Aaron Henry in the 20-game regular season for the Big Ten Conference, when Aaron Henry scores 16 or more points, Michigan State's 9-1. When he doesn't, they're 0-10. I mean, it's really, you don't want to simplify it as much as just saying, hey, it's about making shots, but it's kind of just about if the offense shows up, especially in the half court for Michigan State.
Well, and I noticed against Maryland, and I even kind of said it to you, but you didn't really, you thought it was a different thing, but I thought in the Maryland game, they kind of ran out of gas because they came out of the chute just boom hard. Well, they kind of ran out of gas that 6 games in 13 days or 7 games in 13 days. And then playing an early round game in the Big Ten tournament, they just kind of hit a wall to where they couldn't put the ball in the basket. Like they couldn't buy a basket.
No, you're not wrong. I mean, the 12-minute drought was a real thing for not a made basket.
And then they didn't like blow the doors off once they broke that drought. They kind of went right back into it.
Correct. It's and for me, where I'm at with Maryland, I think Michigan State just doesn't match up well with Maryland. I've come to accept that because the Terps, I mean, what's special about them, and I'm pretty interested to see what they do here in this tournament. The bad part about Maryland, not a lot of depth. I mean, they're going just a few off the bench deep.
But 7 or 8 total, maybe, right?
Correct. But they are long. They are athletic. They defend and stifle and frustrate you because they can switch 1 through 5. I mean, they're all just about the same size. So they're if you go to a pick and roll to try and create a mismatch, I mean, it doesn't exist with Maryland. And so especially for a team that's struggled in the half-court offense this year, like what Michigan State has, it's hard to take advantage anywhere because they're so solid 1 through 5 on defense. I'm really interested in what they end up doing here in this tourney. But UCLA doesn't quite provide that in the same sense. To give a quick scout on UCLA. So what they do so well is offensively, they got 5 guys that score double figures a game. Johnny Juzang, who's a transfer from Kentucky. He is a really great shooter. He's their leading scorer. Tiger Campbell, who some of you listeners there in Indiana might remember, played his prep ball at La Lumiere. He was teammates with Jaren Jackson Jr. He's got the long hair. Great point guard. And then they got Cody Riley and a couple other wings. They're missing maybe their best player in Chris Smith, who actually tore his ACL in his left knee earlier this season, just 8 games in. But they found a way to rally. They ended up finishing 4th in the Pac-12 this year. But what's interesting about UCLA, the last 4 games of the season heading into this NCAA tournament, the Bruins had a lead late, and it collapsed on them each of those final 4 games. I have the stat. I should have it memorized at this point. I think it's 75-31 is what they were outscored in the final minutes of the last 4 games combined. So that's something to watch for.
So even if there's only a few minutes left and Michigan State might be down a little bit, there's still that hope.
Absolutely. And again, then it just comes down to, can Michigan State put the ball in the basket? We've illustrated what those issues have been.
It seems so simple, but yet it's not as simple as just the statement goes.
Correct. And because, I mean, there's been so many mystery cases. I mean, Aaron Henry's been pretty solid for Michigan State this year. I mean, he's almost leading Michigan State in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. Like he's 1 rebound off and 1 block off, literally, from leading Michigan State in all 5 categories. Which, hey, by the way, your listeners might enjoy this. I was going back through some of the stuff, previous conversations I've had with Aaron Henry. So Aaron Henry's from Indianapolis.
Right.
went to Ben Davis High School. He won a state championship there in his junior season in 2017. He and Ben Davis beat Castle in the semi-states. And if there's any Hoosier hysteria fans, check that out on YouTube. If you type in Ben Davis and Castle 2017, you'll see a great game. So Ben Davis was up like 11 points with like a minute or two to go. Castle made a comeback, and Castle was led by Jack Nungy, who, of course, now is at Iowa.
Right.
They tied the game. Ball gets to Aaron Henry with 6 seconds left, starts to make a move inside. He's being guarded by Nungy, kicks it out to Josh Brewer, who I believe is now at Miami of Ohio. He hits a three as the buzzer sounds to send them on to state. So it's a great
That's Hoosier
moment.
Hysteria right there in and of
Absolutely.
itself. Absolutely.
So, I mean, Aaron Henry, I mean, he's been a part of a Final Four. The last NCAA tournament, he was in a Final Four. And he's had great success in the state of Indiana when it comes to tournaments too. So it's something fun to kind of relive with him.
Well, it can't hurt for him, even though it's in West Lafayette to start out. It can't hurt for him to be back home-ish. You know, it's a heck of a lot closer to home than East Lansing for him. So it's a little bit more at home for him. So
no, absolutely. And he gets excited about it too, because I mean, he's a big family person. His family's all there in Indiana. And I think it was that game before Illinois when Michigan State was at Indiana and only had 26 points in the first half, but then exploded for 52 in the second.
Right.
Aaron Henry had nearly 30 points in that game. And he was talking about, I just love being back home. So I expect some big things.
So let's talk a little bit more about the rest of the tournament really quick before we let you go. Gonzaga, we knew they were going to be the number one overall seed, correct? Oh, you're holding up.
They were. Did you want Dixie's bracket? My dog, she filled one out.
She did. Did you like put treats in certain areas? And that's how you figured it out?
I spend way too much time on things like this. So I cut out all 68 logos and it would set them in front of her and she would nuzzle whichever one she picked. So she ended up with almost all Big Ten Final Four. I'm sure it's tough to see there. Was
that by design, mister? Oh, she's a pup after my own heart. She's got Purdue in the Final Four there.
And winning it.
I didn't even see that part. Oh, I love your dog.
Boiler up, says Dixie. She had 2 16 seeds getting beat in the first round, so she's out there a little bit. But see what happens.
You know what? At least it's happened. Baltimore or Maryland University of Baltimore County, is that what UMBC is? I forget what it is. But and they were the Retrievers, I believe. Isn't that their?
There's a thing here. There's a thing here.
So we've got Gonzaga as the number one overall. Yes. Is there any surprise? You talked a little bit about Michigan State being a little bit of a head scratcher, being below Syracuse on that line. Is there any of these seeds that really you were like, really? Why? Utah State and Syracuse, you already talked about them. What other ones kind of stick out as, wow, that may be a little bit of an overreach, or you better watch out for them because they're underseeded?
Underseeded, man, I might have to take a look at the bracket again for underseeded. But no, and honestly, this is a tough year to evaluate because there wasn't as many non-conference games. So I mean, honestly, there wasn't as much room or margin to kind of sit there and say, I don't know about that. But I do think you're looking at some serious potential upsets for this weekend. I think in the West region, I had UC Santa Barbara beating Creighton there in that first round. The Gauchos have been playing really well. Creighton's had some issues coming down the stretch
as well.
See, I think that's a big one. And then the future opponent, Virginia's dealing with some COVID issues, and COVID is going to continue.
Virginia as well.
Ohio is the real deal. They went to Illinois, almost got a win there in Champaign. They got a kid in the backcourt who's going to be an NBA draft pick. I mean, he is that good. So I think you start looking at some of those as potential upsets. And COVID's going to play a part of this. Oklahoma had one of their star players, their second leading scorer out. I think Davion was the name. And then Moses, I believe, of Georgia Tech, their big man. He's going to be out this first weekend. So there's a lot to pay attention to when it comes to COVID-19. If it wasn't already hard enough to fill out a bracket, now you got to pay attention to this too.
Well, and I've got my Final Four. They're 2 number 1 seeds and a what is it? 2 number 1 seeds or 3 number 1 seeds and a 3 seed. I kind of went chalk a little bit. To the extent I've got Gonzaga against Texas in the Final Four on the one side of the bracket. And then I have Baylor and Illinois, and then I have Illinois and Gonzaga playing in the finals and Gonzaga winning. How feasible or do you think? You're the pro here. I want to know how much of on a branch, because I have St. Bonaventure beating Michigan to go to the Sweet 16.
Okay.
I have, like I mentioned, the Gauchos going to the Sweet 16 to play Gonzaga. I didn't go with a ton of upsets. I do have Winthrop winning.
I do too.
It just, but and I have Syracuse. I do have Syracuse winning 1 or 2 games in there too, because
I have
Boeheim, once he hits the tournament, is a heck of a good game manager, and his teams usually do step up. Now they do get beat once in a while too.
Oh yeah, but and they've been playing better ball as of late. Buddy Boeheim has been able to absolutely dart the 3-pointer. So I kind of like them maybe advancing around or so. And if it wasn't for giving up a buzzer beater to Virginia ACC tournament, they would have kept moving on there as well. But no, I as I look at this bracket, it is hard to pick against Gonzaga. I mean, everything they present, they have 3 All-Americans on the team. Their 4th best player recorded the first triple-double in Gonzaga program history. And their 5th best player is the transfer from Florida, Andrew Nemhard, who's an elite scorer as well. I mean, what they do offensively in terms of efficiency, there hasn't been an answer so far, and I don't really see one coming. I just think they're that solid, that good. I do kind of like the Illinois pick as well. I'm kind of riding the Illini also.
I watched that tournament. Oh my goodness, they are phenomenal. They're really good. I wouldn't be honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they did beat Gonzaga, but I just don't think they will.
Yeah, if you're lining up the 2 sheets, I think I'd take Gonzaga's roster over Illinois, and that's no disrespect to Illinois.
Right.
I mean, Gonzaga has a chance to be the first undefeated team since '76. I do absolutely think Illinois is. You're right. I think Illinois is terrific. Audasumu, I think he had a case for Big Ten Player of the Year if it wasn't for Luka Garza doing Luka Garza things.
I was going to say that was not a bad choice for the Big Ten either. Garza is the Player of the Year in there, but I don't disagree.
And I mean, I was averaging 22 a game while dishing out all these assists and everything else. Kofi Coburn on the inside. I mean, good luck to a lot of people who are going to have to try guarding him. Like for Drexel, I mean, Kofi Coburn, I mean, it's going to be a bit of a mismatch. Kofi's shooting, I think, 67% from the floor. It's like one of the top 3 marks in the country, what he's currently shooting at. So Illinois is solid all the way around. That South region, I like Baylor as well. They haven't played as well since they came back from that COVID pause, but Jared Butler in what Scott Drew has been able to do there, I like Butler too. They get after you defensively. That's the big thing. And in tournaments, you can win games with defense. I mean, that's the one thing that carries over from game to game.
Sure, yeah. I was this close to picking Purdue over Baylor, but I was like, no, Baylor's really, really good. Scott Drew's a heck of a coach. Now that leads me to the next question that I really didn't talk to you about this. We talked a little bit about it when on your last appearance, but it has actually come to fruition that Archie Miller's gone, and Scott Drew's been mentioned. I have seen more and more things that mention Chris Beard from Texas Tech as a possibility, and we lost your visual there. But I also have seen excuse me, I have also seen Brad Stevenson's name, and Brad was asked directly, and he kind of beat around the bush a little bit. And every time I see a coach beat around the bush, I always think Nick Saban when he was with Miami in the NFL. How possible is Brad Stevens being the next coach at IU? How possible? I know it's going to be tough, but what are your thoughts on it?
The thing is, I mean, so many different media members, right? They try and take a stab when really it's only in the individual's head. I mean, there's no way to really point at this. I mean, sure, you can lay out the context. It's home. He could come back home. He could rebuild this IU program to maybe it's glory time, glory days. But for Brad Stevens, you think about the situation he currently has with the Celtics. Now, this year has been frustrating for Stevens and the Celtics. But in general, I mean, they've been competing for Eastern Conference Finals. He's got young players and a young star in Jason Tatum, who might be a future MVP himself. I think you have to really get the wallet out. I think you have to really see if you can make a run. And I do think if you're IU, you make the call for Brad Stevens.
Oh, sure.
But I wouldn't guarantee that he leaves that job with the Celtics for Indiana. But and as you mentioned, I think highly of Chris Beard. I love Chris Beard and Scott Drew. And if I'm IU, I'm calling both of those. Now, I saw a couple days ago, Jeff Goodman of the Stadium reported that Drew and Beard have not been contacted yet by Indiana. So I'm not sure where all they're sending out their lines, but those would be some really good candidates. And you keep laying out the context. Scott Drew, it's home, the state of Indiana.
Yeah.
What he did with the Baylor program, he could do it with the Indiana program. I mean, there's parallels in there.
Yeah, because you know what? I am old enough, and I don't know if you were quite old enough to remember the time that Baylor basketball went into the dumpster. They had a player commit a murder. I mean, they were to kind of put your name with Baylor, it was kind of an embarrassing thing. And then Scott Drew came and he rebuilt it to, you know, I believe they're the number 2 overall seed.
Right.
Or third, you know, second or third. They're one of the best teams in the country. Now, I will say, and I can't mention who, but I've talked to somebody that knows a fair amount of people in the IU area, and he said that there has been contact with 3 people that the IU is interested in. There is mutual interest, and every time I've mentioned Brad Stevens' name, it was, well, it's not what he is saying, it's what he's not saying. And
oh, wow.
And it's not that he's saying that Brad Stevens is absolutely the route that IU wants to go, but it makes me think that there's a mutual interest in one another, that maybe Brad is going to be leaving Beantown soon. I don't know. He, to me, is my dark horse of who I would think. I would think somebody like Keith Smart or Steve Alford might be, because he also did say that they wanted to go somebody from the IU family. So, but that doesn't match with Brad Stevens necessarily, seeing that he has no interaction, just Indiana's home to him. But at the same time, I don't know. It's so hard. They're not really releasing much information on who they're contacting. It's going to be one of those that it makes me think that maybe they're still feelers out to tournament coaches because there's not much smoke, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely, and that could be. And I mean, shoot, if you have interest from Brad Stevens, that's somebody you make a play after. I mean, that's. I mean,
the man almost beat
Butler.
Duke with Butler in the finals.
The next year went to the championship game again against a Kemba Walker UConn team. I mean, what he did was tremendous at Butler. I think if you can be anywhere or near Brad Stevens when it comes to basketball, you take it. And I think if IU can find a way, that's somebody. Well, that's somebody you get. That's a darling.
And that's almost what I was thinking when that it kind of made sense a little bit, to the fact that he took Butler, who is that forever always will be mid-major team, to 2 straight NCAA finals. Should have came literally this close to beating Duke. On that half-court shot.
Oh yeah.
Literally, and then he goes to Boston, and people are like, "Why is Boston doing this?" And immediately starts winning. Now, he has only made it to a conference finals, but he has been a successful coach at the NBA level. You know, he would be, to me, if I were IU, he would be the one that I'd be like, donors, let's start opening our wallets. We need this guy.
Well, and donors have, right? I mean, there was the one
buyout,
that purchased the rest of Archie's buyout, and I thought I saw a report that said another donor stepping up to try and help with the hiring as well. So, I mean, IU is, if you're the administration or the athletic administration, you got to kind of sit there and say, well, we got some house money. Let's make a big offer. Let's go get our guy. And
yeah,
I'm kind of interested to see what happens.
And circle the top one and go after him with the cash you got.
I do also love the fact that, okay, so there's 14 teams in the Big Ten, 9 teams made the NCAA tournament.
Yes.
So out of the 5 left over, 3 already switched head coaches. Like that just shows
right.
how top the standards are in the Big Ten Conference.
Well, Pitino, even less than a day later, was hired at New Mexico. It's
correct.
Is he that? I mean, he struggled at Minnesota. I mean, he had a couple of decent seasons at Minnesota, but he struggled there. What's the deal with Richard?
I would counter, though, that he brought in some elite talent in terms of when you look at Jordan Murphy and you look at the Big Ten record books. I mean, his name's all over the rebounding, and he's found himself in history. And then you have Daniel Oturu the very next year, who ends up being, I think, a lottery pick, if not still towards the end of the first round. Yeah. Marcus Carr this year was phenomenal. I don't know how to explain it, but not winning road games has been a thing for the last 3 years and for the Minnesota team.
It was rough for Clem Haskins, Dalton. Jeez, oh Pete. There's only 1 year that I can remember Minnesota was a 1 seed with Bobby Jackson, back in late 90s, early 2000 time frame. That's the only time I've ever known Minnesota to be a fantastic team overall and throughout.
And so the last time there was a tournament, the Gophers were dancing. I mean, last year, the Gophers would have been dancing.
Right.
I didn't think Pitino was doing poorly, to be quite honest with you. And then Penn State gets one of your guys from Purdue, the assistant coach, Micah Shrewsbury.
Yep.
So I'm interested to see how that one plays out, too, because Shrewsbury also has had some Brad Stevens ties, as we talk about him. He coached with him in Boston, and I think at Butler as well, too.
I think so, too.
But it goes to show, too, for Matt Painter, he constantly is able to produce head coaches from his coaching staff. So I think it's a big thumbs up.
Which is an extension from Coach Katie, Dalton. We talked about Coach Katie a little bit off air before we started. And it's amazing to me that he was around for so long. And now, granted, we're still a few years away, but before too long, Matt Painter's going to have been there as long as Gene Katie if he sticks with it. And it's just, Purdue, I don't know if Coach Katie had any input on that, on Painter, because I know Painter left Eastern Illinois to come to Purdue as an assistant for Katie's last year. But they both have been obviously home run hires. That's how tough is that? If it was the same athletic director, I know it's not, but if it were, you made 2 hires in the men's basketball program in the last 45 years.
That's a grade A job is what that is.
Well, it warms my heart that IU's had to go through so many coaches after their legend that Purdue found a decent replacement for their legend. So Dalton, we've kept you way longer than what I had intended, but you know what? I so enjoy talking. And you know what? This is, and basketball is not my number 1 sport, but this is honestly my favorite time of the year for 2 reasons. I love the college basketball. My grandfather and I used to watch college basketball a lot. We really enjoyed watching it. So I love the wall-to-wall, wake up, right around lunchtime, all of a sudden basketball tips off and you're there until you go to bed. And this year's a little different because it starts on Friday, the full force. But that also means come Monday, it starts at like 1:00. The next round starts at 1:00. So I do have 2 days during the week. It's just 2 different weeks now that start at noon. But the second reason is normally the Final Four or the final game is usually right around opening day for baseball. So
that links up pretty well.
A lot of times, and I know Major League Baseball's morphed it to where I think they start on like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday now for most. But it used to be the Cubs would, if they were at home, they'd kick off at 1:20 every day or on Monday, and then after that, national title games on.
You can't beat that. That's a nice day as a sports fan.
Heck yeah, it is. So you know what? Have fun there at Mackey. Hopefully our Spartans can get a win at Mackey Arena finally. Are they the home team or are they the away team? Have they decided? I believe
they're designated home because they were the first on the seed list before UCLA.
Okay, and that's usually the way it works. Is if they were in a top bottom bracket, they would have been on the top. So okay, well, have fun. I know it's a late start, but you know what? Be careful driving to West Lafayette. Get that W, and we will talk Saturday again to carry on the winning tradition
And if we do get to talk Saturday again, we'll be doing it from Hinkle. Michigan State will move on to Hinkle if they win at Mackey.
Former home of Brad Stevens.
Yeah, right. Getting a nice tour of the state of Indiana, so it's exciting.
You know, I've been to one game at Hinkle, and
I haven't been there yet.
Yeah, it literally is one of the. It's the size of a large high school gym. It's great. It is. It's fantastic. You feel that hometown, like that crowd on top of you. Now you're not going to have that feeling, obviously, because there's not going to be near as many fans, but
right.
It is also the place where they recorded the Hoosiers final. So,
which what was in the running for that was the old gym in Butler, Indiana.
You know what it was?
A little bit closer to neck of the woods.
You know what it was that kept them from getting
that? It wasn't big enough, right?
The floor. Had
what
replaced.
Is it? Oh, no kidding.
Yep. About 6 months before David Anspaugh and all the people for Hoosiers went around the state of Indiana to find gyms to play or to record in, the East Side replaced the floor and made it a modern looking floor.
Man.
Up until that point, it was the old style, the old lane and stuff. So yeah, it was the floor because it met every other criteria.
Man, can you imagine?
Yeah,
that's so cool though.
Yeah,
so cool.
Well, Dalton, I appreciate it, and you know what? Have fun tonight. Get tell Izzo that he needs to win because you need to get back on with me. I'm sure that'll make the difference, right? He'll be like, oh well, I can't disappoint Dalton.
Count it. Chalk it up.
Dalton,
thanks, Sam.
Dalton, I appreciate it, man.
See you.